So Coach Kalen DeBoer and the Alabama Crimson Tide go back-to-back days this weekend getting five-star commits. Both players ranking within the top 15 players in all of high school football, regardless of position per the 24/7 Sports Composite. Yesterday, we talked about five-star wide receiver Caleb Cunningham. Today, we need to turn our attention to five-star offensive tackle out the state of Texas, Ty Haywood, where he is the newest member of Alabama's 2025 class. But before we can jump into this, y'all know the drill. I've got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. And I have asked this before, but I think the question is still necessary. Are you surprised by the job that Kalen DeBoer and this staff have done on the recruiting trail? I can't wait to hear from you. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And I'm going to start by answering the question I posed to all of you, because many of you will know I have been a long-time believer in Kalen DeBoer. In fact, if you've been around this channel for a year or two, you'll know from the live streams I have pointed everyone's attention that would listen to me to Washington when Kalen DeBoer and Michael Penix were there, because I would say every Monday evening, hey, they're doing something real cool up there. It's a lot of fun to watch. And it was actually my guilty pleasure team in the Pac-12, where I wasn't going to miss a Washington game. I was enamored by what they were doing, what he inherited, what he was able to do in year one, and then going into year two, I thought it was incredible, noteworthy. But now, whenever he inherits the job from Nick Saban, there were many detractors out there. And we've talked about this time and time again. We're not going to spend much time on it. But for Alabama fans everywhere, you heard the proverbial question, he can't recruit in the South. Can he recruit? Well, fast forward to now, and Alabama currently has the number 2 or number 1 class in the nation, depending on where you look. On 3 has them at number 1 in the nation. We'll unpack that here in a bit. 24/7 Sports has them at number 2 in the nation. But important to note that regardless of where you look, whether you're looking at On 3 or 24/7 Sports, Alabama has the highest player average rating in the nation. And to me, that's the stat you need to be looking for. No doubt, ranking is awesome. Everybody wants to be in number 1 class. Hell, everybody wants to be a top 5 recruiting class in the nation. That was one of the things we talked about whenever Kalen DeBoer was hired, is that if he, with his coaching X's and O's ability, can get a top 5 class, college football is in trouble. So everybody cares about the ranking, but I always point your attention to the average player rating, because if we look at On 3, they're crediting Alabama with having a recruit in the 2025 cycle that was technically a part of the 2024 cycle, and that's Steve Mbuma. Now, granted, that is correct. He had to reclassify. Some things are going on in the background there, so he will be a part of the 25 class if everything goes correctly, as I understand it, or at the very least, he's counted as the 2025 class. But if you look at 24/7 Sports, Alabama sits as the number 2 class in the nation with 1 less recruit than Ohio State, because Steve M hasn't been added to the 24/7 list of 2025 recruits for Alabama. They have 1 less recruit than Ohio State. They're just behind Ohio State in the overall score, but they're ahead of them in the average player rank, which means if you equalized everything, if you gave both classes the same amount of numbers, but kept that average score, Alabama would have the number 1 class in the nation. What this staff has done, and what this staff continues to do, has got to impress even the biggest doubters out there. In fact, if you are still a doubter, I have to hear what you're going to say. And I already know one of the comments will be, oh, but you got to hold on to them until December. Can Alabama hold on to them? And the reason why I don't find that to be a compelling argument, and we addressed this yesterday, is that argument goes without saying. That argument applies to every head coach out there, every recruiting class out there, and so it goes without saying. It's like saying oxygen is necessary for survival. Whenever you're talking about what you need to survive, you're often going to hear food, water, shelter. Not many people are going to say oxygen, because it goes without saying that you need oxygen. So whenever we look at this newest addition, let's unpack Ty Haywood, 6'5", 285 pounds. He ranks as the number 11 player in the nation, regardless of position per the 24/7 Sports Composite, the number 2 offensive tackle, and the number 4 player in the state of Texas, a state absolutely loaded with high-ranking talent every single year. Whenever you look at how many players in the state of Texas land inside the top 300, it is always astounding. and it's a consistent cycle. So it makes complete sense to me when Alabama is camped out in the state of Texas every single year, as is pretty much every major brand out there, trying to pull kids from a talent-rich state. Now we need to talk about what this means, because Ty Haywood is a guy that fits the new offensive scheme, in my opinion, perfectly. He is hyper athletic. He's going to be one of those guys that once you get him in a college strength and conditioning room, once you get him acclimated to Kalen DeBoer's scheme, once you get him acclimated to Coach Cap, this is a guy with an unreal upside. This is someone where once he gets on campus, I'm excited to hear the results because I think he's going to turn heads. He has all the ability in the world. He has all the ability to move in space, to be a pulling tackle, which is exactly what we're going to see in this new blocking system. Remember, Coach Sean, Jake, myself, Jance, we've all talked about this offensive line and how it's going to be drastically different than what we saw under Sabin. Because this offensive line, every offensive lineman is going to need to be athletic and move in space. At Washington, they were pulling the center with regularity. So that's going to be a big adjustment. But Coach Cap has been on the ball with these offensive line wins. Let's quickly run through the offensive line wins because I have another question for you. Is this the best offensive line class Alabama has assembled? And right now, tough to argue against it. You have Ty Haywood. You have Michael Carroll. You have Micah DeBose. You have Jackson Lloyd. You have Mal Waldrop. Ty Haywood's the 5-star, but important to note, Michael Carroll is ranked as a 5-star per on 3. I'm not going to be shocked in the slightest when he ends up as a 5-star on every single recruiting website by December. Put a bookmark in that. I truly think he has the ability. And when you look, they're getting tackles, they're getting guards, they're making sure they have the whole offensive line covered. And whenever we're talking about Ty Haywood in particular, as much credit as Coach Cap deserves, as much credit as Courtney Morgan deserves, as much credit as the recruiting staffers in the background deserve, as much credit as Kalen DeBoer deserves, we also have to give credit where it's due in Key Russ. Because Key Russ said whenever he committed to Alabama, there was a list of guys he wanted to add into this class. And so far, he has made it his mission to recruit those guys, to sell what Alabama has to offer for these guys. And for Ty Haywood, this is someone who grew up an Alabama fan. And what's really important to note is that Ty Haywood at one point looked to be a lock to the Oklahoma Sooners. And you might be sitting there saying, oh, well, so what? We got to win over Oklahoma. You got to win over Bill Bedenbaugh. Bill Bedenbaugh is one of the most elite coaches in the nation. Notice I didn't say offensive line coaches. Go check out his ability to develop players and then come back to me. Getting a win over that guy, over that Oklahoma staff that does such a fantastic job at cultivating relationships, developing relationships, and maintaining those relationships, that's notable. I don't care how you view Oklahoma. I'm telling you the truth of the situation. That staff under Brent Venables does a fantastic job at selling their program to the parents, to the players, to the family, and not just the football side of it. They sell every facet of that program. The reason why I give you that, the reason why I point your attention to that is to, one, give credit where it's due, to talk about a fact, and that's that Oklahoma's done a fantastic job on the trail, but to also point you to the fact that Alabama just beat that team that does a fantastic job on the trail on a shorter timeline. Ty Haywood had the relationship with Oklahoma. He had the relationship with Bill Bedenbaugh. He had the relationship with Brent Venables. This staff is brand new for Alabama. Haven't been there 7 months. Ty Haywood's relationships with Oklahoma span far longer than 7 months. But yet it's Alabama that comes out with the win. And I've gotten comments before, people talking about, don't tell us about the other teams. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you about the other teams. My job is to tell a story, and part of the story is Alabama getting a big win over a team in Oklahoma that had done a fantastic job cultivating this relationship, that has done a great job on the recruiting trail, and Alabama beat them on an accelerated timeline. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you that story. It's compelling. It drives home the point what I continue to talk about. What an incredible job this staff does at building relationships. Yes, we're in the NIL era of college football, but do not be mistaken. Relationships are still king. Development is still king. And you want to know who you can point to prove that fact? Damani Jackson. I've talked about this interview so many times. Damani Jackson flips. He was a silent commit to Alabama. We found that during this interview. He flips from Alabama to USC, calls Nick Saban, talks about that's the hardest thing he did. But on the phone with Nick Saban told him, hey, whatever you feel is best for you, I will be rooting for you. I hope you do well. But also, you always have a home here. That's what I mean. Nick Saban didn't burn a bridge. Nick Saban reinforced a bridge. Even though they told him, hey, we're not going to use this bridge anymore, Saban sat there and said, okay, maybe you won't use it now. This bridge will be used. This bridge will be used. So Alabama right now, if we look at 24/7 Sports, has 5 5-stars. Ty Haywood, Key Russ, Caleb Cunningham, Dejon Lee, Duke Johnson, and they may not be done because they are really in the run for Khalil Lockett, one of the most fantastic players in the nation, one of the best wide receivers in the nation, and that's going to be a battle that's fascinating to see. But the last point I want to leave you all on is this, and it's an argument I see all over Twitter, which really, this is my bad for even addressing it. I see time and time again people saying, oh, the reason Alabama's getting these wins is because Nick Saban is still in the building. Allow me to be harsh for a second. That is an incredibly faulted argument. You're telling me that these kids are committing to a coach that's no longer going to be their coach? Say it slowly. And I guarantee by the time it leaves your mouth, you'll sit there and say, yeah, that's dumb. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense now, does it? They're committing to a coach that will not be coaching them, that may not be there on Saturdays, that won't be there for practice. It makes absolutely no sense, but I see it time and time again. Because people, and this is a natural human reaction, look for answers when they cannot explain something. The detractors cannot explain why Kalen DeBoer and Alabama are doing so well on the recruiting trail, so they grasp at straw. They grasp at anything they can to try and explain. No matter how ridiculously stupid the argument, they grasp at anything. And if you do believe that, I can't help you. If you said that out loud, these kids are committing to play for a coach that's no longer going to be there, that won't be at practice, that won't be at the games, that's not the head coach, that's actually going to be on College game day. If you said that and said, yeah, that makes sense, I can't help you. I can't. This is a massive win for Alabama. They continue to chip away on the recruiting trail. They continue to get massive wins, and I have to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See you.